What's poppin', everybody? This is Ray Rawlins from the Ray Rawlins Network, where we talk cartoons and we damn near do it daily. I'm joined by Alex Payne, as today we're going to be reviewing Season 3, Episode, I believe, 7 it is, of SpongeBob SquarePants, and it's called Krab Borg. Now, Alex Payne, give us this episode breakdown so we can get into the first impressions.
Well, this episode is pretty simple, really. SpongeBob watches a movie about robots taking over the world, and at work the next day, through some, coincidences and circumstances, he gets it in his mind that Mr. Krabs is a robot, and he eventually convinces Squidward of the same. So him and Squidward decide that they need to interrogate Mr. Krabs to prove that he is or isn't a robot, and that's the episode.
Okay, all right, there you go. Nice, quick, short, sweet, and to the point. Let me say my first impressions, man. When I was a kid, this always used to be my favorite episode. I remember summer of 2006, eating a nice sandwich and chips. I know I gotta say that because it's you always remember what you ate on whatever day. Because I'm a big dude, I love me some food. Anyway, I had to be like 8 or 9 years old when I saw this episode, and first time I saw it, I fell in love with it. Honestly, I fell in love with it. And I have to say that, man, see, being a kid, I did not notice the wrongness that was going on with this being a kid's cartoon and like the shit that you see. Obviously, I'm talking about the whole, basically, I wouldn't say, would you call it a torturing scene in a sense? Like, listen, even when the police interrogation. Listen, they were breaking this man's stuff in front of him and seeing how Mr. Krabs loves money. I kind of consider that torture. I'm not saying like it's a bad thing, I mean, it's kind of like a joke at, like, it's supposed to be a kid's show, yo. But like I said, nobody's complaining about it. So it was just a little thing that I noticed and I wanted to point out, not to be like, oh man, cancel this show because of it. No, I meant it as like a joke, obviously. It's like you have so many like things that aren't supposed to be for kids in a kid's show. That's basically what I'm trying to say. But anyway, go ahead, Alex Payne, give your first impressions.
What would I say is my first impression? Well, I guess this will be my first impression. This was never really one of my favorite episodes, and it still isn't. That's my first impression. And I'll get into why when we get into the review.
Okay. Well, that's gonna leave us to go on to the moments. Like I said, I couldn't find many moments that I liked throughout this episode besides the scene at the end. Like when I was a kid, that was my favorite moment. Like seeing Squidward slap the shit out of Mr. Krabs. Where's Mr. Krabs? And SpongeBob's crying, I can't take seeing you slap Mr. Krabs like that. It's too horrible to watch. And he's like, that's not Mr. Krabs. That's a robot in there. And SpongeBob goes up to him, oh, you're right. Pop. Just, where's Mr. Krabs? Or no, he didn't even ask me. He just slapped him. But I do have to say, it's just like, I like how it did. Like SpongeBob has a little kid mindset. You watch a horror movie. And I think we all been there. I know I definitely have. Not to the extreme as this, obviously. You watch a little horror movie, and you start to get scared of the horror villain inside and whatnot, and you kind of think they're real in a sense. And probably the next day, you probably had like the heebie-jeebies. You're thinking about the movie and shit. And it's like, and it kind of manifested in itself because like SpongeBob, obviously they amplified it to the extreme. He couldn't get the thoughts of the robots out of his mind. He's thinking everybody was a robot. He even asked Gary if he was a robot before he went to sleep. So obviously you can see how that stuff was still in SpongeBob's mind. And when he's at the Krusty Krab and whatnot, him and Squidward are talking together, and he's telling Squidward how he thinks Mr. Krabs is a robot because he heard him talking to the DJ on the radio, describing the songs like beep, boo, boo, bop, boo, boo, bop, bop, and whatnot. So, like I said, he's talking to Squidward. And you can see SpongeBob, like, he really wants to get answers to this. So he keeps calling Mr. Krabs and interrupting his day or whatever the hell he's doing. And Mr. Krabs obviously starts getting so annoyed at this. So one of the moments that really pointed out to me, and it just felt so shockingly like, man, Mr. Krabs can be a robot. Because, SpongeBob describes one of the movie robots, and Squidward's like, "What they got? Oh, red eyes, and they have metal pinchers for hands and whatnot." So Mr. Krabs making a boiled egg, and that shit ends up like getting in his eyes. SpongeBob scares him because he called them for like the 90th time, and obviously shit got in his eyes. His eyes were all red, and he had the metal salt shakers in his hands. Pops up out of the office, and then they're like, "Oh man, he is a robot," and that basically confirms Squidward's suspicions too, just as it did SpongeBob. So that's one of my favorite moments, and especially when they go back to the torturing scene. That's another one. You're probably gonna mention that too. So they're breaking all his shit. Like me being as cheap
Well,
as
actually,
I am. Go ahead.
no, I was just gonna say, nah, I didn't really care too much for the torture and scene. It
Really?
wasn't really
Okay.
that great to me.
All right. I gotta say, like me being as cheap as I am, just watching SpongeBob break all that stuff, man, I can see how it was hurting Squidward and Mr. Krabs' name and price. That cost me $22.99. And he said something that was costing $60. Like, oh hell, somebody would get straight fired after this. Because obviously at the end they find out he's not a robot. And obviously Mr. Squidward, I said Mr. Squidward. Squidward had to come and clean up the mess and whatnot, and SpongeBob just ends up heading out. He says it's all part of their imagination. And that obviously, with it being a kid's cartoon, a 15-minute time limit, they had to get like an easy little cop out there. So I can't even get mad at them. But it's like SpongeBob. You knew this was the ending all day, and this didn't hop into your head once, like, oh yeah, this is part of my imagination. Mr. Krabs isn't a robot. That's just me overthinking shit. Nah, that shit just stayed in his head. It's like, yeah, I'm gonna get real deep into this whole thing. We're gonna torture Mr. Krabs, and then I'm gonna say it's part of his imagination. Yeah, everything should be fine. And that's why he got out that jam. He knew he fucked up. He's like, oh, gotta go feed Gary. Pew, got up out that shit. So left Squidward to clean up the mess. But if you don't have any moments, I guess you can go. Yes, you can get into your favorite or your review. Okay, go ahead.
I got a few more. It was funny to me when Squidward scared him and his hat flew off and went on his nose, and he's like, "Why are you wearing my hat on your nose?" And it was funny to me too when Squidward threw SpongeBob in the kitchen, and then SpongeBob like appeared up next to him, and you could see Squidward looking around trying to figure out how the hell he did that. That was funny to me. But that was my two real moments. But to get into the review, see, my issue with this episode is not the episode, but it's like what the episode is. I always hate these stupid mistaken identity episodes, in cartoons and shows in general. Like I hate that. I hate those type of, oh, we think this person is this, but it's clear that they're not that type of episodes. I always hated those episodes. So that's the main reason why I'm not a big fan of this episode, because of what it is, not necessarily like the episode itself, I guess. Because I've never really liked those types of stories. I always thought they're very stupid and kind of cringy, if I may be so bold. So yeah, that's my big issue with it, is I just can't get past that. And plus, I don't think, other than very few moments, there's not really much happening in this episode, and it's not really much that's funny in this episode.
Right. So what do you think about what do you think about the robot? What do you think about the robot song? Boop 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 boop.
It's alright. I drive through the ghetto blasting it, but
that shit was in my head when I was a kid, man, all the time. Especially after that episode when I boop 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 boop. That was in my head, man. I ain't even gonna stunt. And I was looking forward to listening to this or watching this episode again just to hear that sound. But anyway, go ahead. What's your rating?
I'm gonna have to give this episode. A nice, solid 5.5 out of 10.
Okay. You know what? That's not as honestly. I was expecting worse when you were talking about it earlier. I'm like, oh, this is gonna be a bad one in this book. I already know he's gonna hit it with like a 4 or something. But
You know,
I think
I'm gonna go to
5.5.
a five.
Go ahead.
I'm gonna go to a five. I'm gonna go to a five.
Okay. Still beat my expectations, obviously. But I'm not gonna disagree with you on that. I'm gonna give it a little higher rating though. Like you said, this episode wasn't nothing too special. Um, not much really did happen. And I'm gonna even admit I have a little bias towards, like, this used to be one of my favorite episodes when I was a kid. And I got a comment on one of the Courage the Cowardly Dog videos. I think it was the Freaky Fred one. I can't remember the name of the guy off the top of my head. But he said something like, it's crazy how cartoons change when you're rewatching them as a dog and compare when you watched it as a kid. Like, and I said to him, I was like, yo, um, these episodes, like, especially I'm noticing, like, with SpongeBob, when we go rewatch the episode that I liked as a kid, maybe they're gonna be better or worse. Your opinion definitely might change on a little bit, and mine kind of did when I rewatched this episode. Like, as a kid, I thought this was the shit. Now I think it's all right. It's not the best, obviously, but I'm not gonna go down the road and say that, oh, this is a terrible episode by any means. With all that being said,
That's one thing I'll say, and that's one thing I'll say about, like, because you mentioned it. Like, that's one thing I'll say about Courage. That show never it's ageless. Is what I'm saying. Like,
right.
it doesn't, like, no matter if you watch it. The only difference you'll see in the episode is perspective. Like, you're not gonna
Right.
go, "Oh, I thought this episode was great when I was a child, and now this is dookie water." It's like, no, it's like the show aged very, very well. Like, it's just, you could watch it as an adult again and still enjoy it just as much, if not more, for noticing things that you didn't notice as a child.
I agree. But to get back to what I was saying, this episode wasn't terrible by any means. It definitely wasn't the best. It was a very average episode. It had a nice story startup. You obviously see what the plot is. The ending was kind of, eh, you know. Um, I wasn't a huge fan of the ending, but they had to end it some, obviously. So I'm gonna be like you, Alex. I'm gonna give it a low score, but a little bit higher than yours. I'm gonna give it a nice 6 out of 10. So, what do you think about that? You think that's fair?
I mean, it's your opinion, so it's whatever you think it is.
Okay. I'm asking you because I always clarify. You're like, oh, it's good, it's bad, or But I gotta say, like I said, I had a bias during this episode, but that's why I like doing these classic SpongeBob reviews. And anyone who watches this, feel free to drop any episode that you want us to talk about in the comments below. Or if you want us to review an episode of the cartoons, man, drop that shit in the comments below, man. I read all them comments. I respond to all of them. But I give this a nice
all
6.
Three of them.
All 3. Listen, we always have one person watching. So that one person watching, if you got a nice cartoon you want us to review, or another episode of SpongeBob you want us to review, drop that shit in the comments, man, for real. So, with all that being said, I give this episode a 6. You give this episode a 5. My name is Ray Rawlins. His is Alex Payne. This is the Ray Rawlins Network, where we talk cartoons and we damn near do it daily. Soon to be going under some change and a little bit of rebranding. We're going to talk about that in a little mini podcast on Sunday for the one person who's interested. So, with all that being said, we will see you when we see you. Peace.